I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
All right, we're live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, Richard, thank you very much, everybody. Welcome to Pine Mountain, Georgia, where we've gone remote, Dudley. And we're sitting here at the Foxworthy Farm. Mm-hmm. Jeff's been so kind to let us come over here and do this. And we've got a gentleman sitting across the table from us that this has been in the making for many, many months. But I just want to welcome Flip Pallot.
Oh, I like that. New sound.
Yeah, Richie, that's really good. Well, Flip, we're so excited to have you.
No more than I am to be here.
Well, we started talking about this many months ago, and we decided let's try to tag a hunt in it and see if we couldn't have fun for 3 or 4 days and do a podcast maybe during the middle of the day or at night or something. So this is where we find ourselves, and it's kind of the middle of the day. And hopefully we can all stay awake here. But we've got a lot of good questions to ask.
Well, let her rip.
Well, first off, thank you for traveling. Thank you for coming up here. Thank you for the things that you have done in the past. What I'd like for us to be able to accomplish with this podcast today is I think there's a lot of young people that may not truly know who Flip Pallot is. And there's a lot of older guys, like mine, I'm going to throw myself in there, that when I see you, I just have a lot of memories of Walker's Cave Chronicles and a lot of other things, and it's bringing back good memories for me. And I'd like to remember you if that makes sense. So,
and I'm not too young either, so I grew up watching it with my dad.
I'll tell you, this whole remembering thing is starting to frighten me.
Well, so tell us about young Flip Pallot. And what formed your mind to just wrap your heart around the outdoors like it has?
Well, it was easy then, Bobby. I grew up in South Florida, and I lived sort of in a triangle between Biscayne Bay, which has barrier islands to the Atlantic Ocean, and to the south and west of there are the Keys, all the way down to Key West, and then the Everglades on the other side. So I was surrounded by the outdoors, almost didn't have any choice. And I think that kids back then, and I'm talking about the 1940s, the early 1940s, kids were more attuned to the outdoors. They were physically closer to it, and I think they were closer to it in terms of their heritage as well, because I think that my parents were more rural and agrarian than the average parent today around the country. And so we were closer to the natural world by virtue of the calendar and the tradition that was handed to us by our parents and grandparents.
I can't imagine a better place to grow up and fall in love with fishing. You had a lot of opportunities there at your fingertips. Were there guys there? Was it your father? Who put you in their skiff and said, let me go show you how to do this?
Well, sadly, my dad, although he was a wonderful dad, he was not my pal. He had just returned from World War II, and his whole mindset was to provide for a family. It was the first time that the average man could get a mortgage or an installment loan. And so my dad, his number one priority was providing. And so he didn't have time to be my pal and my buddy and take me fishing, and it just didn't happen. And so I did have to look elsewhere for mentorship and excitement and an introduction to the natural world that all of my peers were being introduced to, but I didn't have that person in my immediate family. But fortunately, there were other people who filled that role when I was very formative, very, very young. And my mom, who was simply a housewife at that time, I mean, a homemaker, which most mothers were in those days. And she was liberal in the sense that she was able to drive me to the edge of the Everglades in the morning, drop me off, and let me wander around all day and come pick me up in the afternoon or early evening. And so I had that freedom, and then later met people that included me on their skiffs or on their buggies or on their airboats. And so I wish it had been my dad, but I had another relationship with him that was very good and very healthy, and he became a role model in the area of providing and being a family dad. So
Yeah, that's very important.
There was that, yes.
Yeah.
That teaches a sense of work ethic, and it seems like you just tuned in more to the outdoors and made it your work. So I would like to think you got that from him,
Yeah, the work ethic part of it has managed to elude me all my life. But the outdoors, fortunately, not so much.
Yeah, I feel the same. So what was really your first true love? I'm guessing it's fly fishing, but as far as, being outside, what was your first true passion that you really obsessed over?
It was fishing.
Okay, just fishing in general.
Yeah, it was fishing in general. We lived on a canal, a deep water canal that led from the area where I lived all through the town and out into Biscayne Bay.
Okay.
And so fish from the bay and from the ocean actually made their way up that canal. So even as a little kid, I mean, the fish were right there. So it was first fishing. It later became hunting, and hunting then far overshadowed fishing in terms of my love and my interest. But fishing continued to be my life and a part of my life and my vocation, really, all through my life. So it's been a combination of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people that you've taught fishing. Through the years, I've seen you in a lot of different environments or media platforms, but that Walker's Cay Chronicle, that was a long-running television show. It may have even been the longest-running outdoor program on ESPN at the time.
At the time it was. I think since there have been others, but it went for 16 seasons. And although there may have been shows since then that have run longer, that was the age of television. I mean, that was the age of television. It was when television was at its most powerful. And it's hard to imagine how tremendously powerful television was, but one of those episodes could reach 1.5 million people. It's one episode. Social media, of course, I think has probably eclipsed that at this point. But back then, it was television. And not only was it television, but television, part of its power was that everybody believed television. I mean, it was the universal medium, and everybody believed it. And when we did walkers, we were, if not the first, certainly one of the first saltwater outdoor shows.
Yeah.
And it was also at a time when there was not a lot of competition for sponsorship in the outdoor world or outdoor television world. So producers of outdoor television had creative control over what the programming was. We didn't have to fight off 6 other shows for the sponsorship of Dodge or Bass Pro or Outdoor World or whatever it was. We were the only show in that genre. If they wanted to reach those people, we were the best avenue. So from that standpoint, when you're able to maintain creative control and you don't have to turn every program into an infomercial, you have tremendous power as a producer of outdoor television. And people recognize that, and they recognize the production values that you're able to present, which can't be done anymore because the show has to feature the sponsors every time you turn around. Otherwise, the sponsors won't extend the dollar. So
Right.
We were able to entertain more and at the same time inform to whatever degree we wanted to. And the general populace or the viewership was not as well informed then as they are now. So almost anything that we did was informational. At the same time, we presented, I think for the first time in outdoor television, we presented the viewer with a look at relationships, which I felt was so important because all of us have a hunting buddy or a fishing buddy that we spend the best part of our lives with, notwithstanding our spouses, but we spend a quality of time with the people that we're outdoors with that immeasurable, indescribable, finding ourselves saying things to those people that we wouldn't say to priests, sharing things with those individuals that we would never share with spouses. And so that had never been featured before in outdoor television. And so when we did walkers, the only model that we had was the ABC American Sportsman. And it was never about relationships. It was about a movie star going fishing with a guide or something like that. But he was a movie star. He had no skills. He had no connection with the guide. He had no connection with the natural world, for that matter. He came right off a television screen or a movie set.
Maybe that's why I don't remember that one.
Yeah.
It was very, very good, and
Yeah,
it was
Kurt Gowdy.
I mean,
okay.
it was great programming for the time.
Was that the Claypool's Reservoir?
It was,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Sure
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. I mean, they did great stuff.
Yeah.
We just did different stuff.
They did Fred Bear. That's one they got right.
Okay.
They did. They had
Yeah, they
Fred
did.
Bear on.
Yeah, you know what? He did not live long enough for walkers, but we would have got him. He was one of my real true life heroes, who I got to meet and spend a little bit of time with, and so he would have been there, but it just didn't work out.
We've kind of refound Fred Bear recently, and have just been enjoying the quotes and the sayings, and just what an interesting guy he was. And so, look, Toxie, the owner of the company, wanted to be here, couldn't be here. He had some stuff coming up, but he wanted to make sure I asked this question. I hope I can phrase this right. So when you this isn't his question. This is my question. Am I right? You're just maybe a little over 80 years old.
Yeah, I'm 82.
So you've had a long life of watching the outdoors and watching it transform through these many years. When you think about where we were and you think about where we are, two questions.
Which one is Toxie's?
So Toxie's question is this one that's coming up. Okay, I say that smiling, yeah. So what are we getting right and what are we getting wrong? And we're kind of referring to the direction that we're going.
Well, I don't know that. I think they're both the same question. I think what we're what we're missing, what we're getting wrong, I'll answer it backwards. What we're getting wrong is we're not capitalizing on awareness. People in general who might be concerned, if they were aware, find themselves unaware. I'll give you an example of what I'm saying. You're familiar with Captains for Clean Water in the state of Florida. Very, very, very unique and wonderful conservation organization concerned with water quality in and around the state of Florida. They spent a huge amount of money on a survey 2 years ago, I think it was, to determine what percentage of the people in the state of Florida were aware that there are water problems in the state. And there are. I mean, the biggest problems that the state has are water problems, water-related problems. I think they spent upward of $50,000 on this survey, the result of which was that only 15% of people in the state of Florida are aware that there are any water problems whatsoever. So if you translate that into the real world, the solutions to all of our problems, not just in Florida, but everywhere concerning the outdoors and preservation and conservation, the solutions are all ultimately political. I mean, after you boil it all down, nothing is going to happen without political backing to improve anything that we're interested in. No politician is going to get behind an issue that only has 15% awareness. Simply not going to happen because they are, after all, politicians.
Yeah.
So turning that all around, although we're concerned with this issue, that issue, a dam here, pollution there, whatever it happens to be, the loss of public land, fracking, drilling, whatever it is, if there is not awareness of the issue to the point where politicians will gather behind it for their own good, then we're missing out. We're failing to use the biggest tool available to us, which is ultimately awareness. I think that study simply pointed that out.
That's a great point. And I've, recently there's been a vote about, predator type animals, and I believe in Colorado, and I've been seeing a little bit of that on social media and such. So, maybe a little bit of change is going on. People are trying to use their influence to share what they're passionate about.
Stakeholders are always aware, but they're not the ones who vote on these things. They do vote, but they're not the majority of people who vote. So the majority of people who vote are uninformed, unaware, and we have failed to make them aware. And it puzzles me because we have at our disposal now social media that everybody is exposed to.
We can definitely use that as a tool.
So we're missing out.
For sure.
That's kind of a windy
No
response.
No, it's not. It makes a lot of sense when you said those figures. As somebody that pays attention to Florida, and I don't live in Florida, I'm just astonished that percentage would be so low. That seems like a...
Here's why I think. The huge majority, the overwhelming majority of people in Florida are people from somewhere else. They have no roots in Florida. They have no traditional Florida values. Neither are they aware of what was in Florida, what has been lost, what has been overlooked, what has been unprotected. They have no clue. So it doesn't shock me that they're unaware that there are water problems. You know what? They turn on their sprinklers and water comes out. They turn on the hose to wash their Porsche, and water comes out. They go to the golf course, and the greens are green.
So
And they're happy,
good.
and they think it's fine, and they don't care that alligators are having a problem, or there's no more skunks, or there's no more nighthawks, or they don't care. They don't know. They don't care.
Hey guys, listen up. Let me tell you about an awesome deal Springfield Armory is offering now through the end of 2024. When you purchase a brand new model 2020 Waypoint or Redline rifle, you'll receive a model 2020 Rimfire rifle with a black synthetic stock absolutely free. That's an over $400 value on the house. You know we love Springfield Armory and their top-notch products you'd be proud to hand down to your kids and grandkids. So why wait? Learn more about this incredible offer at GearUp2024.com. Springfield Armory. Defend your legacy.
See these people? When the clock strikes 5, it's not the end. It's just the beginning. They have to do these things. They have to do those things. Enter the all-new LS Tractor MT2 and MT2E, a relentless force of innovation. Redesigned with a new hood and cab built for comfort and visibility, with enhanced lifting capacity to get the job done. Making these people the ones everyone else calls those people. Visit your local LS Tractor dealer today.
Been about 8 or 9 years ago, I went on a squirrel hunt with some friends on the Mississippi River and posted a photo of it. And, you know, I hadn't seen or heard of you since I was a kid, and somebody commented, "Nice Model 12" on my Instagram post. And I was like, oh, I agree. It is a nice Model 12. And then I saw it said Flip Pallot on the post, and it took me a second, and I was like, holy cow, you know, the man is back. You know, this is great. And so I looked around and I saw, you know, a lot of the stuff you had on your page was hunting related. And then I, you know, started looking more, and you kind of have this sense of, I don't know, like an artist, you kind of have a style, which you are an artist, but I think you know what I'm talking about. You just have a little bit more traditional, and I don't really like to use that word because it kind of lumps it all in one category, but you do kind of have a certain way of doing things. Well, you shoot a custom made stick bow.
Yeah.
Why do you prefer to make it a little bit more difficult on yourself? Can you explain that?
I can't really explain it. I think the reason is the same reason that I prefer to fly fish. It's a little more challenging. It gives your adversary a little bit of an edge. It's more contemplative. I love to walk through the woods carrying something that I know another man's hand spent literally hundreds of hours making, or that I made myself. I understand the other side of that coin.
Sure.
I mean, the newer techniques and camouflage and scent control and ozone, and I mean, all these things. I understand it. I get it. It's technologically wonderful. And I think that anybody who wants to do that should absolutely do that and have my blessing. They're outdoors. They're doing what they love. They're doing what I love. They're just doing it another way. And that's okay. I hope what I'm doing is okay with them.
Okay.
I hope I'm not getting in their slow moving way. Getting in their way. I hope not. But you mentioned Fred Bear earlier this morning. And you mentioned that you enjoyed his quotes. I think perhaps his greatest quote was, and this may be the wrong audience for this particular quote, but he said that the best camouflage is sit still and shut up.
Yeah. No, we get that.
Yeah.
I've always adhered to that. I believe in sitting still and shutting up for the most part. Although I was hunting yesterday with Rich, and I wasn't real quiet, I don't think.
Yeah, the whole story that Fred had, Fred Bear had such wisdom that if people today could kind of tap back into that, it would be so good for the sport. And we, like you, there's been a lot of technology that has found its way into the things that we love so much, whether it's electronics and on a fishing boat, or it's even, I mean, just what we have access to hunting now. It's technology has made its way in, and in many cases, it's made things better. And in many ways, it's made me yearn for the older way of doing things.
For many, many years, I was a guide. I guided hunters and I guided anglers. I guided them in the Southeast and I guided them in the Rockies, and I guided anglers out west on western trout streams. And I've seen exactly what you're talking about, this influx of technology into the plain, simple touchstones that we used to have to the natural world. One of the ones that aggravates me the most, and I don't mean to pick on anybody, but when I see a robo-duck or an animated turkey decoy, or when I see that, I marvel at the technology, and at the same time, I weep for that person's loss of experiencing the real hunt and the skills that are involved to make it a real hunt. Yes, we're smarter than ducks. We're smarter than turkeys. We can fool them with batteries and I don't know. It's okay for them. Not okay for me, and they should be okay with that because I'm okay with them doing it.
I think a lot of folks, if you ask them, would tell you that, I do that because everybody else does. Like a lot of the spin and wing decoy guys would be like, I wish they never existed. We wouldn't, if everybody didn't have them, nobody would need them. So I'd see where you're coming from on that.
So Flip, when I look at that, at the bottomland camo, mossy oak bottomland that you're wearing, that's a little over 35 years old. So for a lot of us, when we see that and wear that,
it's the old days.
It is.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of young people that remember their dads or their uncles. That's what they used to wear. And they want to wear that as well.
Now it has to be digital or the deer can see it.
Well, so we just see so many people that want to wear that because of an old memory. And that's so cool.
An old yellow photograph, yeah.
Yeah, it really is. So that to me, that when you lean up against a tree with that on, it's magical. I've always said you like an old cottonmouth water moccasin laying there because can't anything see you. So. But look, okay, so I've got a question here. I would love for you to take us back to a young Flip Pallot and killing your first deer and tell us that story. And then I'm going to ask you to fast forward to the last deer you killed. And let's talk about what's changed for you in between those two hunts.
Sure. Well, the first deer that I killed was after a lot of deer hunts. And I was with my brother. My brother is 7 years younger than I am, and he was just tagging along. He happened to be around at one day when I was going, and I wish I could tell you that I did everything right and that I was so skillful, but this would have been, I'm trying to think, this would have been in 1963, something like that, 1964, somewhere right in there. So I was walking down a swamp edge. My brother was behind me, just a couple of steps, and there was sawgrass prairie on one side and there was cypress on the left. And I was walking down the edge, and I looked way down the edge, and here came a small little basket 8-point, just walking toward me, just looking around, but walking at a pretty good clip. And he was just walking. So I stopped. I stepped to my left behind some cypress, and I signaled for my brother to do the same. And he stepped over into the cypress as well. And when the deer got about 5 steps away, I shot him with an arrow in the throat. He was walking right straight toward me. And to tell you the truth, at that time, I probably anatomically had no idea where I should have shot that deer, but I did have archery skills at that point, and I shot him right in the throat. And this is the embarrassing part. We got to the deer. He ran off a short way and died. He bled out immediately. And we went a short ways and got the deer, and I had no idea what to do with that deer. I had a huge dead animal, and I could skin a rabbit and a squirrel, and here was this big deer.
Didn't
and I had
know where to start.
No, I didn't know what it was, to tell you the truth. So
I bet there was some whooping going on, though. High five, and that may not have even been a thing back 60 years ago.
no, it wasn't. It wasn't. I think we may have hugged or something, but I felt so inadequate because I had no idea what to do with him. I had in those days I had an old GMC pickup that was really beat. And I had a magazine, an old Field and Stream magazine. And remember how they used to have those how-to articles in the Field and Stream magazine? It was how to butcher a deer. And then it would be a big one, like step 1. And off to the side would be this picture of skinning a deer. And then it would be step 2. And it was in my truck. I went back to the truck and got a Field and Stream magazine and laid it on the ground next to this deer. And I went, okay, 1.
How about that?
2. And we finally got that deer butchered. And it was, I mean, for me, it was such a new thing, such a new and different thing. I knew I wanted it. And then when it happened, it was everything that I hoped it would be, which is not always the case. I mean, right down to the butchering and everything, the whole thing was sterling. And the last deer that I killed was really not so different than the first. It was last year in Texas. A dear friend, Rob Fordyce. And I was in a blind. I told somebody this story. I think I told Rich this story. I was in a pop-up blind, and I shot at a really nice 10-point that walked down the trail in front of my blind. And I was using a longbow, and the upper limb of my bow, when I made the shot, the upper limb of my bow hit the metal support of the pop-up blind, knocked the bow out of my hand. I had no idea where anything went. I didn't know where the arrow went. It was just a catastrophe. And I looked out, I was shooting through a little hole about this big. I looked out through the hole and there was nothing there. And I was looking out the hole and all of a sudden I see the deer run past with an arrow sticking out of his neck. And he runs off into the brambles and briars of Texas, which is formidable.
Yes.
And it was falling dark, and I got out my little light and I started looking for blood, and I found some pretty good blood. And directly Rob came to pick me up with a buggy, and he had a big, really bright light. So we had a pretty good blood trail and found the deer. And we had to do, we did just the same thing I did on my very first deer. I mean, step 1, step 2, only now it was just part of my life, to do things like that. And so it's funny that the last one was in the company of someone who I love, and the first one was in, and I think that's a huge part of hunting, if you can do it with someone that means something to you.
Yeah.
And they can be some part of it, whether it's the shot or the blood trail or the butchering or the eating, as long as they're somehow part of it. So in those ways, the first deer was much like the last.
That's interesting.
Very good.
Yeah. What about your brother? How did it impact him?
No, it didn't. He's all about music. He loves. He'll go anywhere that I go. I mean, he would do anything, but he loves music. That's him.
Yeah. I can picture in my mind's eye though, down along the edge of the Everglades and that.
Yeah, it's like a painting, you know.
So that part of the world has always kind of had an appeal to me. One of the first books that I remember reading was The Yearling, and it was set in Florida. And
Yeah.
you know, and then if you read that, you recognize what a big wilderness all that occurred in. And I'm just picturing you growing up in that same environment.
Yeah, it's very mysterious and very unlike any place else. It's aquatic.
And y'all have had pigs down there for forever, but how come they just haven't? It seems like they haven't taken over like they have here in Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana. It seems like y'all have just kind of managed them. Am I getting that wrong?
Well, we have rednecks.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have a population of rednecks devoted to hogs. I mean, you get to some parts of Florida, especially where I live.
Are you in that category?
I would be proud to be counted in that
There you
category,
go.
of course.
Okay.
Every truck has a bulldog in the back of the truck. I mean, it's a way of life.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there was a time that the hogs were pretty much everywhere. They've been thinned out a bunch now, and I think one of the biggest innovations has been, now you take Georgia and Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, where you have hog problems now. There's not as much public land in those states as Florida had or has. I think Florida has more public land than any place. And so the hogs got hunted a lot there. Private land, not as much. But I think the big thing that's happened with this whole public land thing is GPS collars on dogs. I mean, now, you can turn loose a pack of dogs on a hog and you'll get the hogs, and as an added benefit, you get your dogs back.
Yeah.
That was not always the case. I mean, people were throwing jackets down and leaving them there for their dogs, for weeks, rounding their dogs back up, sometimes never. So the level of efficiency of hunting those hogs is tremendous now. The methods of baiting them, to include some unconscionable techniques as far as I'm concerned. And hogs are more generally vilified now than they ever were. So everybody's pissed off at them, and they're a problem for everybody. Everybody wants to get rid of them. To me, they're the ultimate game animal. They're good to eat. They're fun to hunt. They're tough. They're smart. They're resourceful. I mean, to me, they're perfect. I'm not pissed off at them at all. But they're not rooting up my pastures. So
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, I was going to ask, because if Flip Pallot sees a pig and can get the wind right on him, is he going after him?
every time.
Yeah. Have you had? We've got a lot of pigs where we are, and we work with a company that's trying to help catch the whole sounder. They make these traps that can drop. It's some pretty really neat technology to help farmers manage their properties and try to control these pigs that are eating up crops and causing so much damage. But there's some of us that love, if I'm in a deer stand and I hear some squeal and I can get the wind on them and try to go to them.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Every time.
But I have had this nightmare of I can kill every 200-pound sow I encounter, but every other year I'll encounter a 325-pound boar, and I'll shoot him in the same place I shoot these females, and I can't find them. They are, or I'll find every other. It's like they are so tough.
You shoot them with an arrow?
No, I'm shooting them with a rifle, and but they're telling me that there's this armor plate around their shoulders.
If you're shooting, my experience, my opinion, based on thousands of them, if you're shooting a hog with a rifle, you have to shoot him high in the shoulder. If you try to shoot him in the heart and lungs, it's not going to work. He'll die maybe, or probably, but you're not going to find him. They're very tough, but if you shoot him high in the shoulder, which is where I shoot a deer too, you're going to break down both shoulders and the top of the lungs and the bottom of the spine.
Yeah.
And
no track job.
Yeah.
Yeah. There won't be a blood trail, but he'll be right there.
Right. So you have this armor.
It's called a shield.
A shield. You know exactly what I'm talking
Exactly.
about. What is it made of?
It's some sort of grizzle or suet, and it's about this thick on a real big boar hog.
Yeah.
And it keeps them from getting stuck by other boar hogs in the vital areas. So that shield covers all of their vital areas, but it's very, very thin at the shoulder.
So when you've got your stick bow out there, and if you encounter a big boar at 12 yards, where are you going to try to put that arrow?
Well, you can't shoot him in the shoulder. You have to shoot a hard, long shot, but I'm shooting a very, very heavy arrow that gets tremendous penetration. And so I can usually penetrate the shield. I don't get many pass-throughs on big boars, but I prefer the big boars to eat anyway, because they're always fat. Their hams are always covered with fat. They're always in good shape, big muscles. The sows are always poor. You know, they're always pulled down by babies.
Their babies.
Yeah, litter.
That's a good point. You usually hear the other way around,
I know.
and I think that's more of a wives' tale.
Well, here's what it comes down to, again, in my experience. People go, I don't want to mess with a rank boar hog, and some of them can be rank. But once you get the hide off of them, they're all the same.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the hide and the glands. And once you peel that off, you have all the fat and all the big muscles and the big healthy muscles, as long as you remove those two glands out of the hams. And people go, no, I don't like cooking those boar hogs because they're rare. Well, if they cook the whole ham or the muscles and don't remove those two glands, I mean, they're huge in a boar hog, and very unpleasant.
Yeah. Right near the big one is right near where the tri-tip would be, right in the middle of that back leg.
That's exactly right.
So
it's behind the tri-tip, between the tri-tip and the bottom round.
that's right. Bunch of veins and stuff in there too. We don't want to mess with either. But
Do you rifle hunt at all?
Mm-hmm.
What's a caliber that you like?
I think any caliber is good as long as it's a 270.
Jack O'Connor. Here.
If it's good enough for Jack, it's good enough for me.
Yeah,
I like it.
I like the 270. It's gotten a lot of abuse of late, but it's a classic.
No recoil. That's the biggest part of it for me. Is it's the flattest shooting, no recoil round I think that's ever been invented.
So, and we like it. Or I used to reload for it. 55 grains, 4350, and a nozzle 130 grain partition you can't get any better.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of good bullets now, but I love that setup.
I agree.
Sure do. Dudley, what you got?
well, I kind of want to get a little bit more into some of your tactics. We're all carrying our bear compounds, and you're walking around with a stick bow. Some of our listeners may want to know some kind of tactic traditional archers use. You've got to get closer. And so what is something that sets apart what a traditional hunter will do, and I'm not knocking compound hunters. I use both, but yeah, what is a good tactic to hopefully get them a little bit closer?
Well, I think you have to work backwards to establish that. And what I mean by that is, I think, and it's different for every archer, and it's different for every hunter, depending on what their skill level is as an archer and their skill level is as a hunter. And a lot of that is just experience. And a lot of it is dirt time. I mean, you just decide you want to do it quick, you have to put in a lot of dirt time. But when I say work backwards, that's what comes to mind when you ask me that question. For myself, I know that I'm most comfortable as an archer if I'm inside of 20 steps from what I'm trying to shoot, whether it's an elk or a whitetail or an antelope or whatever it is. And the closer the better. If it's only 8 steps, that's better, because you lose energy quickly with that tackle.
Mm-hmm.
So the closer you are when you deliver whatever energy you have to an animal, the better it is. So if I'm at 8 yards, 10 yards, 12 yards, man, I'm really happy there. But if you're a whitetail hunter, you understand that being that close to a whitetail, not only is it a function of you being up against his hearing abilities, his seeing abilities, his smelling abilities, but they got something else.
Yes, they do.
Mm-hmm.
They got something else. I don't know what you call it, but if you hunt whitetails, you know exactly what I mean. And that's the boogeyman. You can get the wind right. You can hide yourself. You can be quiet, but whatever that other thing is, there's no defense against that. Mm-hmm. So you just, there's a lot of serendipity involved in a successful bow hunt for a whitetail. And the unsuccessful ones are just as fun as the successful ones. It's just that you got beat at your game by somebody that was better at it than you were, but you were in the deal. You were in the fire. I mean, it wasn't executing an animal with technology, because I love being 200 yards from a whitetail and shooting him with a 2.7. I love that. Or I can see how someone with a compound at 40 yards or more would take great pride and have wonderful stirring time doing that with them. I can understand all that. But imagine if it's happening at 8 steps, the intensity. You see the reflection in their eye. And you were a hunter first to get that close to them. You may not be a successful hunter, and you often are not, but still you were a hunter and you experienced all this stuff viscerally in a way that you just can't do it at 100 yards. And I love doing it at 100 yards.
Yeah, well said.
You just love it even more up close.
Do you find yourself in that we're talking about that boogeyman, that sixth sense that we all have encountered?
What is that?
Do you find yourself not looking them in the eye or trying not to look at them?
Absolutely. And ask me why. I don't know. They can't see me.
It's like you're.
But I do that. I don't make eye contact. I don't know why I don't do that.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. It's like they can sense it.
And Lanny jokes about he'll get so excited he'll open his mouth and he can hear his blood pumping from inside his throat. He gets so excited. He's scared they're going to hear it.
Hey, Lanny.
Hey, Bobby.
Have you ever wondered if your feeder went off or if it's even got corn in it?
Yeah, you sit there at night wondering about it.
Moultrie has solved this. This is some high-tech stuff.
Fits on any feeder that helps monitor the level of feed and lets you know if it went off or not. And you can remotely control it.
Can I look at your feeder if we're on the hub?
I really hope not, but we're going to have to talk to the guys at Moultrie about that. This is the biggest thing in feeders since corn.
That's saying a lot.
With Feed Hub, there's no more stressing, no more guessing. This technology allows you to remotely monitor your feeders.
You know, we always say feed safely, do it the right way.
No doubt about it.
To learn more about it, visit moultrieproducts.com/feedhub. It's a great invention.
Unbelievable technology and products brought to us by our buddies at Moultrie. Nosler is known for their bullets, and now they're making suppressors. Nosler suppressors are made for hunting. Adding a Nosler suppressor to your rifle will make you a quieter, more accurate, and more effective hunter. Protect your hearing and disturb less game with a Nosler suppressor. The time to hunt quiet is now. Learn more at nosler.com.
Can you take a minute and go back through your mind all those reels of hunts that you've got stored in there? Can you tell us one of your favorite deer stories?
I have a story that would be my favorite deer story, I think, just on short notice like this. But
That's how we roll.
But you got me. But I don't know that it would have a whole lot of meaning to anybody else. It wasn't a special hunt. I've been going to Texas, bow hunting with. Started out. It's the friend that I referred to earlier, Rob Fordyce. He's a guide in the Keys. Has a television show called The Sea Hunter. And ever since he was 12 or 13 years old, he and I have been hunting and fishing together. And in the beginning, I had a lot more experience and knowledge than he did, and got to share. For all those years, I got to share that knowledge and experience with him. But at some point, his level of knowledge and experience got to be the same as mine. And then at some point, his level of experience and expertise got to surpass mine. And he started taking me to Texas.
Okay.
And we
nice of you to own up to that.
We were still going to Texas together, but the roles somehow switched. And one year we found a water hole, and we found a really significant buck using that water hole. And so we built a blind, which in Texas, if you've ever done that, everything's got stickers. There's no foliage, really. Everything is stems and thorns. But somehow we got a blind built under a cedar tree next to this, probably about 10 or 15 steps from the water. And there was an area of the water hole that this deer was really using. And so we set up a Yeti chair in there, in that blind for Rob. And he was going to hunt there. And there was another ladder stand that was about 3 miles away. And it was sort of out in the open. There were a couple of little mesquites around, but it was out in the open. And for a whole bunch of other reasons, another whole story, we called the place Comedy Central. And so I was going to hunt at Comedy Central. Rob was going to hunt at this under this cedar tree. I dropped him off, got him all tucked in and everything, and then I rode off to go to Comedy Central. Got there, hid the buggy, climbed up in the ladder stand. I was in the stand for maybe 5 minutes, maybe less. And I had a brand new longbow that this wonderful bowyer in Montana had made for me. And I saw front legs of a deer underneath some mesquites about 15 yards away. And so I was real still. I got myself in position, but the legs just stayed there, and I couldn't tell if it was a buck or a doe or what. Then it moved forward, and now I could see the rear legs, and they were all tarsaled up. So I knew it was a buck, but I still hadn't seen the head or anything. Then he stepped a little further, and I could see the antlers in the head, and it was a real big 8-point, really nice Texas deer. And then he took one more step, and then I had vitals that I could see. And so I shot him, and my shot was a little high and maybe a little back. And I thought maybe if I got lucky, I got some lung in there, but he wheeled around and he ran into this, I don't even know what to call it. It was just a maze of thorns and stickers and horribleness. And so I got so excited, and I got down, and there was really good blood. So I called Rob on the cell phone, and I went back and picked him up. Because, I mean, for us, it never has been in all the years. I mean, if one of us kills, I don't know how far to go with this story anyway. If one of us kills, we want to get on the blood trail together. We just interrupt the hunt and get on the blood trail.
Sure.
So I went back and picked him up,
Yeah.
brought him back, and we started going through this cactus and stickers and everything, like carefully using arrows and using the bows and everything to move things apart and make our way back and follow the blood. And then the blood ran out. I mean, completely like no blood. We just did all the things that you do to find blood. We couldn't find blood. But there was a trail of destruction of cactus and thorns and branches. This deer was just mowing his way through all this stuff, no longer leaving any blood, but you could clearly see his trail, and you could see his track on the ground as well. So we followed that, and finally found him piled up under this other sticker thing. But by that time, we had sort of lost track of where we were. I mean, we were just in this thicket of stickers, and all we could see was, where the sun was, and we knew roughly how to get back to somewhere and everything. And so we're slowly picking our way through, and he and I are both dragging the deer. And do either of you know Rob?
I'm aware of him. I know he's what a great fisherman he is.
Oh yeah, he's an outdoorsman, complete outdoorsman. And anyway, he's very big and strong. And finally, he just got sick of picking his way through these thorns and dragging the deer around bushes and everything else. And he just pushed me out of the way, grabbed both legs, and like a Volkswagen, just started mowing and plowing his way through these things until we got back to a trail where we could get back to the buggy and get that deer loaded up. But I mean, that story, not because it was a special story, but it's just one of those hunts. And it was what I referred to earlier. I was with somebody that I care about and that I know cares about me. And it was a happy ending to a very challenging sort of hunt. It was a great deer and a great blood trail and a great personal relationship. And it was the perfect storm. All of the ingredients were there for the,
For sure. Finding that spot, building the little homemade ground blind, having the big deer come in, stick bow.
Did you guys
trailed it with your friend? I mean, that's got all the ingredients.
It was all there.
Love it.
Did you ever see a movie called So I Married an Axe Murderer?
Yes.
So do you remember, it was, what's his name? Mike
Myers.
Mike Myers. He played the part of himself in the movie, but also the part of his father, who was an old Scottish guy, and he and his wife were, I remember they were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary at a big party or whatever it was. And they had a guy playing the bagpipes.
Mm-hmm. It was probably him too.
It was him too.
Yeah.
He was playing a third part. So he's playing the bagpipes and he's playing this song on the bagpipes, and finally it gets the best of him, and he blows the bagpipes until he passes out and he falls down. And Mike Myers playing, the father had the microphone, and the big crowd of people standing around see this piper fall down, and the guy goes with a Scottish accent. He goes, "We have a piper down." And so Rob and I were watching that movie together. We thought that was so funny. We have a piper down. And so every time one of us, I mean, even back to, remember the days of the Nextel phones?
Oh, yeah.
When you would beep, and Rob would beep me, and he'd go, "We have a piper down." And when he would kill a deer. And so I would get in the buggy or get on whatever, the truck, and go over to him. And so over the years, every time one of us kills something, we do that same thing. We call each other, "We have a piper down." So even now, I mean, he's out in Texas right now. And if he kills something this afternoon, I'll get a text that says, "We have a piper down." So it's just been a joke. And that happened on that hunt. You know, when I texted him and said, "We have a piper down."
Yeah, Mike Myers used to say, "If it's not Scottish, it's crap."
That was a great movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah, it is. Dudley, you got any other questions? I'm going to change the subject if you don't.
Okay. I've kind of got a couple of change the subject questions myself too, but go ahead.
Well, I wanted to ask you. I've got a couple of things I'd like to find out. 80 plus years of age, you look super healthy. You were very active. You're climbing ladder stands. You're shooting bows. You're fishing. Yeah.
Making rum.
Rum the secret here.
Rum. Yeah, it's just all about rum.
Yeah. Is there any other wisdom that you could give someone that's my age? I'm looking at you like I want to be as active as you are when I'm your age.
Tell you the truth, I'm married to a woman who understands nutrition, and she takes better care of me than I take of myself. She's really super concerned about, I mean, she's not like a nut job, but she understands what we're doing to kill ourselves. And she is really conscientious about shopping and preparing meals. And so I credit Diane really with my health, which, you know, if you live a long time, stuff starts, no matter what you do, stuff starts getting tired.
Yeah.
And you have to get it fixed mechanically. And I've done that. I've done a bunch of that. So nobody gets out without tremendous scars.
Yeah. I've heard you say that you think you've poled more miles than you've walked.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I mean, all the years that I fished, you start poling when it's light enough to see, and you pole all day long until you can't see anymore. And I did that. I've done that all my life. And I do it still on occasion. So, and polling, when it's done right, is an art form. And it becomes a way of life. I mean, it really, really does. And so there is no question in my mind that I've poled way further than I've walked.
Wow. What you got, Doug?
Well, so I enjoyed a sip or two of this rum you've produced, Frigate Reserve rum. But what interests me about it, I'd love to talk about, you know, how it's produced and all of that stuff. But I'm really more interested in the frigate bird and the quote, "Life on the wing." Can you kind of go into the frigate bird?
Sure.
And that quote for our listeners a little bit?
Sure. Well, this whole rum thing started, I'll condense this. It started where we were 5 guys in the Bahamas in the wintertime bone fishing. It was right at the time, just after George Clooney had sold his tequila company for something like $1 billion. And jokingly, we're sitting around drinking rum. We all loved rum. And it was night, and we were around a fire in the Abacos. And the fire is roaring and we're drinking rum. And somebody said, we should start a rum company and we should sell it like Clooney did for $1 billion. And
Of course.
We'll buy a G5. We'll take all of our friends to the Seychelles and we'll, and everybody's laughing and drinking more rum. But one of the guys took the idea seriously. And when we all left and went our separate ways, he went off and did a bunch of research on what it would take to go in the rum business. And so we did, and that's another whole story. But as to the bird, if you're familiar with a frigate bird or a man-of-war bird, they go aloft, and they can stay aloft for extended periods of time. And they can sleep on the wing and travel on the wing and feed on the wing and remain on the wing for days and days. And they do that over the domes of the most beautiful oceans of the world. I mean, they're found on every tropical and subtropical ocean in the world. And when we started thinking about a rum company and doing this thing together, the 5 of us, who all have similar lifestyles, it occurred to us that our lives were sort of similar to the frigate bird, that we all lived on the wing, and we all identified with the frigate bird. And so I forget the exact conversation that resulted in adopting the frigate bird as the mascot of the company, and the name of the company. But it was for that reason that we all admired that bird and observed that bird and
very symbolic. I wasn't familiar with the bird.
I've been fishing out of Venice, Louisiana once, and my buddy saw one, and he was explaining how cool it was. And of course, we went straight to it and caught some mahi. But he was explaining the significance of it, and I've just kind of been enamored with that species ever since.
Well, that bird will...
It's like a symbol for many things.
That bird will find a predator underwater or at the surface, and he will follow that predator all day long. And when that predator finds a school of bait and drives it to the surface, the fish will swoop down and feed. But he'll follow that or that school of dolphin or a single billfish, and he'll follow that fish all day. And so very often when we're fishing offshore, we'll find a frigate bird, and we'll immediately put one guy in the boat in charge of watching that frigate bird all day, and we'll try to stay with that bird all day until we get a chance to bait the predator or predators that he's following. But he is never there just gliding around for his health. He is always over a predator, always. And so if you can stay with him always, you'll always be in the game, as opposed to just aimlessly trolling around the world trying to raise a billfish or a dolphin or something.
Kind of reminds me of the crows following the turkey around. Of course, that's not always true, but
it's not always true. Buzzards will do that too. Yeah. They'll swoop down in a field on turkeys. And
frigate bird. How do you spell that?
Frigate.
I'll check that out. And so if a guy's old enough and has and is interested in it, where could they find your rum?
Everywhere. It's everywhere now.
Okay. And they would look for Frigate
Reserve.
Frigate Reserve rum. And if they're in a place that doesn't have it, they can ask them to order it from their distributor.
Yeah.
If it's not on the shelf. But it's generally on the shelf everywhere now.
So I want to go back. I'm trying to pull out some wisdom out of you. I look at you and I see a wise person.
Oh, do I have you fooled? And it was easy. It was easy. You're a big, slow-moving target.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's me. But I'm thinking that our listeners can learn something from you here in how through the years you've gone about your marriage. Is there any tips that you can give a young person listening in regards to around hunting and fishing? Because that seems to be where we all kind of have to tread lightly. We all love it so much, but we love our significant others. But you got any advice?
Well, I guess in the final analysis, it's not up to you. And treading lightly and all those things may help for a short time or not at all. But in the end, it's not up to you. So if you're with a person who requires your presence, if you're with a person who doesn't have a life of their own and doesn't have interests of their own and isn't able to occupy their own time and space, then the likelihood is that you're with the wrong person. And if it lasts, it'll be a stormy voyage. When you leave to go hunting and fishing, the person you leave has to have a life. If they don't, I don't see the future. So I attribute a lot of my freedom to the fact that Diane has freedom and the wherewithal to enjoy that freedom in her way. I think it helps to get married a couple of times so that you know you got it right.
Good answer.
That is good. What about fast forward just a little bit? Think about trips that you didn't take in your life that you may have wished that you had. Have you got any, give us some advice to a young person that may have an opportunity to go somewhere, but it's a struggle financially. Looking back at your life, what advice would you give them? Would you say, figure out how to go on that trip or save and do it later, or where would you be there?
No, you must go. You must always go. You're only sorry for the things that you don't do. As I look back, I'm fabulously lucky. I've been able to travel and hunt and fish in places that I never dreamed I would ever be able to go. I used to read all the magazine stories about Stu Apt going to New Zealand and trout fishing in the mountains of New Zealand. And I'd read that and I'd go, God, this is so wonderful, but I'll never get to New Zealand. I know that. And back then I should have found a way to do that. I'm sorry I didn't do that then. I'm sorry that I never hitchhiked around Europe for a couple of years. These are the things I look back and I wish that I had really had the fortitude to do. For some reason it wasn't convenient, or for some reason finances got in the way. Don't let that stuff get in the way. Do the things that your heart tells you to do. In the long run, you'll be so much happier for having done it.
You got grandkids?
I do. I have a wonderful granddaughter who's 18 years old. And it's been an eye-opening experience watching her grow up in today's world and comparing her voyage to my own and the people that I watched grow up in my time. Really, the differences are astounding.
There's so much technology in your hand that can take up so much of your time today that a lot of us didn't have to go through. I don't know that I'd want to grow up today and have to deal with some of those things.
I'm not fearful about the people that are growing up today. I'm really not. it's the next generation that I'm fearful for what I see coming and what I see having left. Maybe the latter more than anything else.
Yeah.
It's that next generation that's going to truly live a different life.
So, Flip, when I read about you, and I read that you get up most mornings before daylight or at daylight, and you're tiptoeing out into where you live is kind of remote in an oak hammock, and you've got turkeys around, and you've got sandhill crane, you've got all this wildlife, and you like to sit and listen. And is this spiritual for you? Are you a spiritual guy?
I don't think so. I like coffee. So I get some coffee every morning, and I love to see the sun up. So I try to see the sun up every day. And I like to shoot one arrow in the morning. So I do that. And I'm in this oak hammock over a swamp, so the turkeys roost right there. So I get to every single morning, I get to hear what they say in the dark and what they say as it's getting light. And I get to hear them fly down. I get to hear what they say then. And when they hit the ground, just because I'm in this great place, I get to hear all this stuff. So I know what turkeys say. I know what people think they should say. And I know how people call it to them and everything. But I listen to turkeys just about every morning. I know what turkeys say.
Well, I've got it on my agenda. One of these, before we break this camp, we want to sit and talk to you just specifically about turkeys.
Sure.
I think you've got some insight there. So, Dudley, that about does it for my questions. But what have you got anything? Richie just handed you a note. Does he have to go to the restroom or something?
Richie has a question, and it's a broad but narrow question. We kind of hit on a little bit earlier, but ultimately, if you were to wake up one morning and said, "What's your choice?" Would you rather be in the woods with your longbow, or would you rather be out poling in the flats?
I'd rather be in the woods.
What would your answer have been 30 years ago?
It would still be the same.
Okay.
Yeah, it would still be the same. Not that I don't love them both. I do, but I don't love them equally. For some reason, there's more in the woods. I mean, that was Richie's question. I sat with Richie this morning.
Mm-hmm.
Not much happened deer-wise, but there were easily 12 or 15 species of birds, different species of birds that visited us. I mean, really close. One almost, a titmouse almost landed on me. So there's always something going on. And the amazing thing about it is that it's connected. Mm-hmm. It's all connected. I mean, those birds were where we were for a reason. They're not always there. It has to do with something. And if you're quiet and sitting and get a chance to observe it and think about why they're there and what they're doing there, as opposed to where they may have been a month ago at that same time of morning. I mean, you start tying things together. We had crows. We had crows come stop on top of us and look down into the field that we were sitting over, and they were looking at a particular thing in that field. And they gave it a real good look, thought about it for a while, and then decided they weren't interested and left. But, I mean, there was just all morning long. We didn't have deer, but we had a ton of other stuff going on. Plus, I got to pee twice.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Never afraid to pee in the deer woods.
Flip Pallot, you're one of the most interesting persons I've ever run into. Guys, you've been in these Yeti films. There's so much of your life has been documented in very interesting ways. And I think YouTube probably houses a lot of this. So we would encourage guys to go to YouTube and type in Flip Pallot.
Type in Flip Pallot Outdoors, and it'll take you to my YouTube channel where a lot of this stuff lives.
There we go. If Toxie were here, he's a very deep thinker, and he would look at you and he would just commend you on a life well lived.
Could say the same about him.
Well, you know, we surround ourselves with the things we love, you know, and it ended up becoming a way of living.
Yeah.
And it works, you know, and it seems to have worked with both sides.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Well, you've certainly been an inspiration to a lot of people, and goodness, we just want to thank you for sitting down and talking to us. We're going to do this again before we break this camp.
Okay.
But I have certainly enjoyed it.
Likewise, and I appreciate you taking the time and flattering me by having me here on this podcast. I do appreciate it.
No, you're very welcome.
And we're going to eat oysters tonight and stone crab claws. So
yeah, we're trying to feed you well.
Do we have to? Yeah.
no, I'll eat them.
All right, guys, I'm looking around the room. I wanted to say thank you to Jeff Foxworthy for letting us be here. Thank you to Glenn Garner, who's been on our podcast numerous times. Mm-hmm. Thank you. He's been working hard to set all this up. And look, we've still got an afternoon to go enjoy. Dudley, you can take a nap. And we've got the afternoon to enjoy.
And to John and Richie for pointing the cameras at such boring subjects.
Yeah. Richie, you don't have to applaud for yourself. So, all right, guys. Well, I'm looking around the room. I am so excited to be looking at Mr. Flip Pallot. It just Flip short for Philip.
Yeah, it is.
Do many people call you Philip, or does everybody just call you
Philip?
No.
I've never really ever gone by Philip. I don't. Even when I was little, it was always Flip.
Sometimes we call Dudley Flop.
No comment. He's speechless.
Yeah. Why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley. Get us out of here, Richie.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast. And be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine, and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.